This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, good morning, everyone, or actually good afternoon now that it's afternoon. Wanted to invite all of you to join us online, of course, you're joining us, and to invite you to ask questions interactively if you like. But if you are having some problems with background noise or ambient noise on your line, please feel free to use the chat room. We'll peruse those questions and we'll actually push those to the end of the presentation, and Paul will answer the questions then, as many as we have time for, and the others will be posted on the Vivit website, so you'll be able to pick it up there. And there's information in the presentation about how to get out to the Vivit website. Of course, those of you who are Vivit members can get out there very easily. If you're not a member of Vivit, then please feel free to join. It's no charge to join, and Vivit welcomes you. Speaking of, and if we go to the next slide, Paul, please. Speaking of Vivit, one of the things that I wanted to say is that Vivit, as well as DFW-QAA and the Mercury User Group and Microfocus, are all sponsoring today's event. And we are all having our groups join together. You may have heard earlier that we were talking about why don't we have more groups join from geographically diverse locations, because we can do it online now and be sponsored by more than one group and have more interesting discussions and discussions more often. So today's group is sponsored, or today's presentation is sponsored by those three groups: Vivit, DFW-QAA, and Microfocus. And I do want to thank Microfocus especially and call them out because they are providing the Grubhub coupons at the end of the presentation. So please make sure that you gave all your proper information when you registered so that you can get that Grubhub coupon by email. Next slide, please. My name is Ray Rivas, and actually I work for iDeliver Technologies and have been working with these products for, I hate to say how long, but actually since LoadRunner was introduced in 1999. I actually started with Mercury back in 1998 and ran forward several years with them, and then went on to work with other companies such as Worksoft, and who does the certified tool, and other products out there. Worked with the Legion products for a while, and then also I've been a Mercury partner, an HP partner, and now a Microfocus partner for a good period of time, working with various partners. Currently 6 years with iDeliver, and we specialize in the testing tools. So this is something that's near and dear to our heart. If you could go on to the next slide, please. I now want to introduce Paul to you. Paul is going to be our speaker today, and Paul has an equally experienced background. He's been working with these products for over 10 years with Microfocus as an architect and solutions architect and designer of testing programs and things of that nature. In addition to administering ALM, Paul has held roles not only as a tester, but a developer, an automation specialist, and a performance tester in small and large organizations. Just prior to joining Microfocus, he was a program director at a leading large-scale projects where he was recognized for overseeing multi-million-dollar projects that aligned business goals, technology solutions, process improvements, and bottom line gains in general for the organization. So Paul knows his way around testing and what we do there, and I think you'll enjoy his presentation and his general manner in speaking. Next slide, please. Okay, wanted to give you an idea of what to expect here. We appreciate you joining us today. As you heard, the session's being recorded. The on-demand recording, slide deck, and questions and answers will be posted to the Vivit website. So invite people from who've been invited by Microfocus, and also from the DFW-QAA to go out to that site and view that information on your own after the meeting, so you can get more information. if you do need more information, feel free to reach out to Paul or myself or Terry, and we'll be glad to connect you with the people that you need to get that information or provide that information ourselves. Okay. And if you haven't gotten in already and gotten your audio pin and all that set, please go ahead and do that so that you can mute and unmute and ask questions during the live section. Paul loves to interact with the audience, so please feel free to do that. So here's an idea of how to use the control panel. Submit a question, click on the dialog box, that icon in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, type your question, or as I said, you can unmute and just ask the question directly. Next slide. Now, just a quick word about Vivit. Vivit is a nonprofit organization started by customers in 1993. Roughly 35,000 members worldwide. Have 84 local user groups, 21 special interest groups, and Vivit members are located in 159 different countries around the world. So it's your primary source, other than the microfocus site itself, for completely unbiased and uncensored and field-tested information about the products. So this is not just for practitioners, but for managers and executives too, who want to get hands-on with the products and understand what the true value of using the products is. So next slide, please. The event is being recorded, as I said earlier, within about 48 hours. It usually takes about 2 days of attending the webinar. You'll receive a code via email to redeem your $25 dining card. And if you need more information, here's Paul's email address, and of course the microfocus email address. And you can reach me directly at ray@ideliver, all one word, -inc.com. So please feel free to reach out to any of us, and we'll be happy to provide you that information. Next slide, or next 2 slides.
Sorry about that, Ray. I think I've copied and pasted wrong into this one, so that I've actually got the next slide. It was this kickoff of mine. Let me see if I can pull up the slides that you're referring to. Sorry about that.
Actually, the last slide was just a thank you. I had it in my deck. I take it you didn't have it in yours. That's fine. The people have all the information. Really, what they need now is you to talk to them and tell them a little bit more about this exciting AI usage for automated testing. So take it away.
Thanks for that. Yeah, so like we said, I'm Paul Bratlin. I've been with Microfocus for a handful of years before, as Ron was saying. I dabbled in a lot of the software side of life, QA all the way kind of through program management, BA. I did stops on a lot of the roads. My wife says I tend to get a little bored and would find things and fix things, and then they say, hey, why don't you try this, so on and so forth. So what I like to do when I'm talking with user folks like yourself and customers is really kind of tailor the conversation to what's going on. So a lot of the pre-submitted questions that we got here were around automation. You know, how do we go from zero automation or a low percentage of automation up to the you know, hopefully a larger percentage of that. So what I'm going to do today is kind of talk a series of things, give you a little background on where we at Microfocus tend to start conversations, and then bring it into the automation side of it, and why we made certain decisions to get there, and then show off some of our newer technology. So to start off with, we're going to talk about what we like to call release velocity. And bear with me, a lot of times people go, well, why are we talking about release velocity in the automation deck, right? Or conversation. So roughly what we see on this slide is a pretty simplistic deployment, right? So somebody comes up with an idea, we code it, we unit test, we validate security, you know, sometimes validate security maybe somewhere else, maybe integration's a little farther up the road, so on and so forth. But, you know, kind of very simplistic, right? Code all the way through deploy. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that happens on the left. Most stuff happens in between some of these arrows, but let's just make this an easier conversation, right? So normally just work without having to, wait on an email reply, or, Bob's on vacation, so we got to wait for Bob to come back. The tech lead is in a meeting, so they can't do this. Rough time spent, we're talking about 7.5 hours from code all the way into deploy. About 180 minutes total to get everything done. I'm sorry, 7.5 hours. But we get all this kind of time waste chunk, and there's no real easy way to get rid of time chunk in a manual process. But things like, hey, we've got code. We had to wait a half a week for the unit test supervisor, or excuse me, the supervisor be ready to kick off unit test, validate security. Hey, the system team might be integrated on something else. We might have missed their sprint or their workflow release, whatever it is. So we waste a couple weeks here. Some of these numbers might be a little bloated to make the conversation more interesting, but honestly, a lot of these are maybe even underscored, and there's probably one's meeting here. So what you really get is about a rough day worth of work ends up taking 6 to 7 weeks to get out the door. That kind of release velocity really slows down, and a lot of this is kind of the business process behind that. So here at Micro Focus, we kind of started having this conversation of what can we do to speed up some of this time frame of time wasted. Well, DevOps has come along, as folks are kind of familiar with the word being thrown around, and its goal is, just like Agile and Waterfall and a lot of process improvement areas, is trying to speed up how we get from idea through code out in production, so our companies can start using that code and start making money off that code. So here's just a kind of a rough DevOps tool chain. Again, other processes are more complex, something similar. Really what I like to show here is how confusing this all gets from a manual process, and why people are starting to automate this, both in automation of tests and automation of process, right? So we've got our developers on the left. They check in code version control. If we're lucky enough to have a continuous integration server, it wakes up. It pushes things into delivery. It also pushes things into asset. That delivery server pushes back into asset repository. Okay, we're going to go into deployment. Now we got to go back into CI. I can click this button all day long, and you can just see the spaghetti that goes out through there, right? So again, when we go back to that first conversation about time waste, if this is still being done manually, and honestly, it's being done manually in a lot of shops, you can imagine the poor individual having to do the deploys out through here, or, hey, we got to make sure the QA manager is signed off on this before it gets into there. Oh, the staging manager and the delivery manager should make sure it's signed off before we deliver it into staging. You can see where this tends to slow down. And on top of that, if you start doing your test server and your quality automation, which a lot of folks still are, in a very manual process, you can imagine the time on that, right? If every time I've got to log into the system before doing this, and that's a manual as opposed to an automated script, you can imagine that 5 minutes log into a system, probably 10 to 30 seconds to log into a system, but you have to do that every time manually. You have to look up the username because it may not be in your test case. You can see where this stuff starts to compound, right? If you've got to do that multiple times. So like I was saying, Micro Focus is looking for ways to make that easier for our customers to get through and do things faster, more efficient, hopefully better. So it's not quite as stressful when it comes up to release days and release sprints and things like that. So you're not, burning the midnight oil quite as bad to get out there. So what we did is we see these as kind of challenges and our tools that can, or personas, I should say, that we're matching up with. Now, no one really fits solely in each one of these categories. Again, personas are kind of these nice generic terms. Most people fit into multiple ones of these, maybe, one that's not even in here. But we've got our coded developer testers. These are the folks that are usually on the dev team. They're really comfortable in an IDE. They want to get things done, and they're probably also really responsible for unit testing. In the middle here, we've got a QA automation engineer, and some of you on the phone are in that role. These folks tend to be the folks that are building the framework and getting the code going to do the automation, right? They may take a handoff from manually testing or QA testing, manual testers, to make that work, and a lot of times what we see in the industries and software in general is the automation folks may be 1 or 2 sprints / releases behind the manual testing, simply because right now that is the automation engineer. They want to make sure that their tests are robust, and they may be a little behind. And a lot of times what happens here is, the developers, if we're working in a sprint or a condensed release, the developers are busy trying to get the code out to a tester to test that with. A lot of times the QA engineer, the automation engineer, excuse me, is waiting for that code to be ready to test it, right? To write their code against it. So you have to kind of have code to write code towards is what's going on. So that's that central area. And then we have our domain expert and our business analyst, right? This side of the pendulum or this persona, they know the application very well. They may not know how to code. They may not really know how to test it, but they know that system inside and out from a business standpoint. Why did we do X, Y, and Z? When I click this, it goes over to here. When I click that, it goes over to there. So those are those folks persona-wise. And like I was saying, more and more we're trying to get fast-paced releases out and changes to the applications fairly quickly, right? If you're a waterfall team that's transitioning to Agile, this is kind of one of those, hey, we used to release, one every couple of months. Now we're trying to get something ready to be released every 2 to 3 weeks. Not saying it has to be released, but on that path, right? We also have the automation coverage. So this is a big one. When we talk to our customers, like I said, it's really tough to do automation in a lot of these fast-paced environments. Even before, when we weren't, trying to release, every other week or once a month or whatever your release cycle is, automation coverage was pretty low across the market, right? For a lot of folks, 30% was actually a pretty high mark when we're talking with folks. A lot of them are in the single to low double digits to start this conversation. The reason for that, again, is we'll get to it later in this when we're talking, but a lot of this comes into, hey, in release 1, the button was called sign in. In release 2, it's called login, right? Now the automation has to be updated for that change. And finally, like I was saying, the high maintenance problem there, right? So you might write something in release 1, now we're in release 2, and what you wrote in release 1 needs to be updated. The same problems that are facing source code for the application also reflect into the automation coverage. So here's an example of that. What I have here is our little demo environment. It's called the Advantage Online Shopping site, and it's actually live. Anybody can go out there and play around with it. For Ron and I, and maybe some of the other people that have been in this tool set for a while, our UFT and quality test products, this is our updated replacement to the flight reservation system that used to ship out and be part of the testing application, right? So this is a little site that we threw together. It also has an Android application and an iOS application. If you can see over here on the right, we have subtle changes across those, right? So the Android application, the profile picture is that, and the word is log in, all one word next to it. In iOS is the same picture, but login has a space and it also has a cog next to it. And finally, on our website, it's in a completely different location and it's a completely different icon. One might say that this maybe not be the greatest design choices out there, but again, since we're a testing software, we're trying to point out, hey, this could be a change that happens, right? Use your talents to kind of extend it towards your own applications here. And you can see these subtle differences probably wreak havoc in a lot of places, right? So again, now our problem that we're facing here is in a lot of our legacy code and a lot of our competitors, that's 3 scripts to test that, right? One for Android, one for iOS, one for web. And you can imagine if in release 2, we change each one of those pictures or change something on that, you can imagine now we have 3 scripts to update, right? So again, that time to market is really hammering us, and the high maintenance, right? So instead of I've written 3 scripts, something changed, I need to update 3 scripts. So what we have in here, and this is kind of a canned demo. Again, reason why we're doing this is so when you do download in and look at these slides on yours or replay this on the recording, you can see what we're talking about here. If you're interested in more of a down in the weeds, let's see this work, please go ahead, like Ron was saying, reach out and we can set up some time to do a live demo as opposed to a canned report. But let me just go ahead and hit play on this one. A lot of you are familiar with this. This is a UFT script with our legacy setup. Basically device.app mobile object menu, tap that. Okay, now tap the profile. Let's log in as AI demo with the password AI demo. Don't worry, again, this is a demo one. UFT, if you're not familiar with, you can actually make that password not visible as you're running that, right? It's more encrypted, right? So again, quick little demo. It went through, a little script popped in there. We get our green check mark in UFT saying everything is good, everything passed. Here's all the steps that passed and life is good. We ran that test. So now, like I was saying, let's do a quick change to that application, right? So our before, we've got a shopping cart on the left and our profile or our hamburger menu on our right. After our change, we decided to swap those two around, right? Maybe our analytics department went in there and said, hey, most people aren't clicking in the right area. Let's go ahead and swap that out. You know, new design set or best practices, shopping cart on the right, and that's where everyone's familiar with it. You know, whatever reason somebody has decided to make that change, let's go ahead and run that. So I still have my same script from before. If I kick that off, we're going to go in, click the menu, and click profile. Oops, UFT did exactly what I told it to do as legacy code, but now that was the shopping cart, not the profile, right? So UFT says, hey, I don't really know what to do here. For those of us familiar with the UFT script, that nice little red checkbox error is one of those that'll drive you slightly insane as you're trying to figure out what happened since the last time you ran this. And now you have to do your fun troubleshooting to get down through there. You get your nice friendly error report, basically saying, hey, I didn't know, I clicked where you told me to do. Here's a screenshot that I produced. Is that what you were expecting? More often than not, like I was saying in this earlier conversation, since we know we made the change, now I have to update this script. So like I said, why is this happening? So in our legacy setup for UFT, we have the object repository, and basically what that does at the time of recording or of writing the script, we basically go in there and say, okay, here's everything that's part of that screen. We have the login, here's its location, its class, the Android app, text on that resource, local repository, and everything built into that, right? And that's what happened between release 1 and release 2. When I ran my script on the second time, the login button wasn't where UFT expected it. And our legacy code said, well, I found a button, I clicked it, right? As opposed to, well, I clicked the right button. So we started asking at Micro Focus what we could do to make this more as a human does it, as opposed to a machine going, hey, I clicked there once before, I'm going to click there again. So as a human, when you see this, you say, if I tell you, hey, go click the profile button, most of us are fairly experienced enough to go ahead and find that login button and click it. Why can't we get a machine to do that? Well, the answer that's starting to come to the forefront of late is AI and the major research areas. In the interest of time, I'm going to kind of skim through this, but major areas here are problem solving, deep learning, social intelligence, general intelligence, so on and so forth. UFT, we're concentrating on these 3 areas: machine deep learning, natural language processing, and perception. So perception is just a fancy way of saying, how do we as humans, or how can we get the computer to see closer to how we see as humans? Deep learning and machine learning, supervised learning, hey, we're going to sit there and say, this is this, this is this, this is this, to train this the system to do what we asked for it. Again, how to identify a login button or a hamburger menu. And unsupervised learning is more the, okay, now that I've trained you, go ahead and learn on your own, right? If the login button changes to the sign-in button, hopefully you're smart enough to realize that change and still click in the right way. Okay, so in that kind of contest, I'm going to have a volunteer here. Let's talk about what we see on the screen. And if somebody wants to come off mute, great. If not, you can just kind of think about it to yourself. Give you a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds to think up your answer there while I grab some water. So basically what we have here is 3 dogs. The last dog is a quote unquote socially responsible dog, right? So we've got 3 pictures of dogs. Life is good. I just told you guys the picture on the far right, because they're wearing a face mask, although not very well, is a socially responsible dog. So now I'm going to show you 3 pictures of cats. What do you see here? Well, those of us, as we're kind of thinking through this, sometimes we overcomplicate things, but the answer is we've got 2 cats and a socially responsible cat, right? As I was having this conversation with you, I was basically saying in this picture, the dog has a face mask, socially responsible. So now I show you 3 pictures and the cat's wearing a face mask, they must be a socially responsible cat. For us to do that is fairly simple for most of us. As we define the rules, we learn that and we have that conversation, but it's really hard for computers to do that. Well, have you ever tried to figure out why we are capable as humans to sit there and go, oh, okay, if I showed you 3 pictures of birds and one of them had a mask, you'd now go, okay, yeah, Paul, I get it. The mask equals socially responsible. Or in other contexts, we used to have pictures with dogs with glasses, right? So 2 dogs without glasses, one with the sunglasses equal to cool dog, right? As we have this conversation, people tend to pick up on it. We as humans, we rationalize that and we learn and we go through that. And the reason why we do that is the power of the brain or the neural networks. So how do we create those internally as humans, right? So we got a little baby. I've got a 2.5-year-old here at home, 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, and this rings very true, right? So as a newborn, they can't really do much other than sleep and cry to let you know it's time to either eat or get a new diaper or something's wrong, right? There is no way my 2.5-year-old, well, now they can, but any of my kids as a newborn could differentiate a cat or a dog. But roughly about 1 year old, they start to do that. They can sit there and look at an animal and go, okay, that's my cat or that's my dog. There's another dog over there or that's a cat. And the way they're able to do that is mom, dad, grandmas, grandpas, aunts, uncles, babysitters, daycare, everyone sits there and helps that child understand that, right? So the first time they point at a cat and call it a dog, you go, no, honey, that's a dog. And then they start leaning over and over, kind of from their mistakes and their successes. When they point at the dog and they say dog, and you go, yep, that's a great job. They go, oh, wow, that's good. They said that was a good thing. I now know that's the dog. And you repeat that over and over and over and over. And voila, you start getting trained on what a dog looks like and what a cat looks like. So another question for everybody here. On the screen, I've got 3 pictures. What is common across all and each one of those? Now I'm going to grab a glass of water while you're thinking about that. And if anyone wants to pop off mute, go right ahead. If not, I will do the next section here. We'll give you all right, we got a couple of people chatting it in. Yep, the answer is correct. It's all login screens, right? So this is a login screen. This is Office 365 logon screen as a website, and this is Office 365 logon screen, just as you probably pop up in your corporate networks all the time, right? So we sat down and said, yep, those are all login screens. We looked at it and we said they're login screens. The answer is most automation software out there can't do that. Right, these are 3 completely separate items. They have separate forms. When we look at it, and a lot of competitors, when we look at that, there's no way the same script can run on all 3 of those. Well, we came up with an update to UFT to hopefully help that. And it's called our AI utils. So we have spent a fair amount of time. This has actually been out in UFT for a little over a year now, maybe a year and a half, and it's rolling out into more and more of UFT, kind of coming more to the foundation. So I'm going to hit play on this script, and as I'm showing you this, call out a couple of things. So we're going to define a device and an app. Don't install that. We're going to say, very much like our last scripts, we are going to click on the hamburger menu, click on profile, log in with AI demo with the AI demo user ID and password. So over here on our right, we're pulling up our device and running through it. And this first time through, we're running an Android 7.0 device through this on our script. We're now searching for a 17T computer. We find it. We're going to add that to our cart. And in a longer script, we probably would buy that and move on. Now, our second iteration, we're running the same test script, but in this case, we're going to run on an Apple device. Looks like 11.1.2. Also probably need to update my my recording here, so it's closer to the 14 that we're actually running in iOS. But same script, right? And if you notice some of the little differences here, or remember back, our login and our profile button were swapped around from Android to that. So there's our quick little run. Yay, life is good. We went ahead and run that. I'm going to pause here real quick, actually rewind just a little bit. So as I said, we ran this through once as an Android device, once as an iOS device. You can now do this on web pages, but in the interest of time, we kind of sub this down to this. What we're doing here next, as you recall on our check mark going through here, we took pictures of what we clicked and where we thought we should click. So I'm going to pause right here. So let's say this script didn't work, and the build failed or the testing failed because of this, so on and so forth. What we did here is highlighted where we clicked. We didn't tell the system to go into the top right corner and click the hamburger menu and go down. All we told it to say is go hit the hamburger menu and then select profile. So this is our little way of saying, hey, if the script goes funky, maybe we clicked in the wrong area, let us know and we can help you get to a better description on where to click there. So I'll go ahead and hit play here again. And we're now showing you this on the Android device versus, well, this is now the Apple device on the left-hand side, the right. The previous one was on the Android device on the right versus left. So those of us have been kind of in this space for a little bit of time. When they first showed this to me, that was kind of the mind-blown moment. You mean I don't have to update and say, go click this coordinate over there, or hey, the login is now the sign in, or the profile, the hamburger menu switched with the profile. It's one script and went ahead and ran. Okay, so let's cover some other things. That's all well and good. I showed you guys the AI util ... but what about our user base that may not be very comfortable in hand typing out AI util, do this, then click this, go there. This is more what we're calling the natural language processing in a nutshell. So real quick, I'm gonna throw this question out to you. You don't need to respond, but if I ask you to test and basically do the following tasks, perform a search for dog in Google. Everybody here in their brain would kind of say, okay, I'm going to do pretty much the following, right? I'm going to open up a browser. I'm going to go to google.com, unless google.com is my homepage, but you understand. Enter dog in the search field, click the search button, and explore those results, right? We all kind of got there. Some of us may have added some steps. Some of us might have taken some steps away, but just in general, that's pretty much what we all did. So now let's make this easier for somebody to do that may not know code. So what we're gonna do here is select an Apple device. Like I said, we need to update this. But we are going to launch that device, and this is gonna be our kind of what we call our codeless approach to this. So here's our application on the right-hand side. This is UFT codeless over here. We're identifying objects. So here's our application being loaded up on the mobile device. I turn on visual elements. UFT looks at the screen and says, this is everything visual that I've identified. Step one, click the hamburger menu. I'm writing this out. I can either write this or click on the device here to do it. Click on profile. Okay, now the profile button is popped up, or the profile screen. Type in AI demo into user. Type in AO demo 1 into the password field. Click on a button. So just different ways of getting there, right? I now want you to click on the login button. Very similar to the scripts I've been showing you before in this slide deck, but this way is just another way of doing that, right? So if our user base or some of our user base, like I said, maybe are subject matter experts or application experts that really know this system inside and out, but may not know how to code, but they want to show you how to test something, this would be a nice, easy way for them to do that. And again, all they're doing is interacting with the device. This is set up as an app on a phone, but this can easily be a website and run the same way. Fast forward a little bit through here as they're clicking through all and doing all those buttons. So again, this is kind of our simple script that we've been running, right? Hamburger menu profile, login, and away we go. One of the things that might go haywire when you're doing this, either in UFT code or UFT codeless here, is we may not have recognized something on that screen. So in our case here, there's this detail button here, and that may not be something that UFT AI has ever seen before, or we may be just misidentifying it. We're giving you guys what we call the feedback tool. So from the application itself, you can go ahead and launch this and say, hey, and I'll go ahead and hit play as this is going, you guys didn't identify that properly. So you guys can tell us and say, hey, this is a details icon. Submit this to us. And now your feedback is sent back to us. And that way we can sit there and train our AI utility that we're shipping out to you guys and basically say, hey, this is now a detail button. So we'll retrain, or in addition to our existing one, train it to understand that details button. Couple of things I want to call out here as we're doing this. One, usually people are asking, well, that's great, Paul, but why would I be the guinea pig to train your system for you? Well, if you're the one helping us train the system, most likely our stuff will notice your stuff better than somebody that's not helping us train the system, right? If it's something that's always out there, yep, we're helping each other out and life is good. If it's something that's new and kind of nuanced to your industry, again, you're helping yourself make the scripts run better, and you're helping us make them run better for yourself. Next question I usually get around here is, that's well and good, but hey, I'm in a regulated industry. There is no way I can send you a screenshot with proprietary information or somebody's personal information or something on there, even though it's in our test environment. The feedback tool will let you kind of obfuscate things. So you could go in there and blur out the HP Invoice 17 Touch or anything on that screen and just tell us what individually you want us to look at. And then we're going to retrain our AI util to look at that, pick it up and say, okay, that's the thing. And then on our next release, hopefully, it'll be updated and you can run with it. If that's one of those things where, hey, Paul, that's well and good, but I can't wait for the full next release to do that, let us know at Micro Focus what's going on. Most of the folks on this call will have a sales rep or a solution architect like myself assigned to you. Let us know and we can work through you. Open up a support ticket too when you're having this conversation. We can help. We can redeploy portions of UFT, especially around the AI portion of this, without having to do a full reinstall of UFT for you. So if you need something before the next release, hey, I'm under a crunch, retrain the system and let me know and we can go from there. So that was the feedback tool. I'm going to queue this up and say, hey, I want to run it, guess what, on an Android device, an Apple device, and a mobile web device on this one. So it is the same easy script in the more, hey, I tell the system, click the hamburger menu, click the profile. Instead of AI util, blah, 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 I click run and this sucker goes. First time through, it's running on an Android device. And as you see, this is a very simplistic kind of check and go way, more of a smoke test than a detailed test, but you can understand how this goes more and more complex as you start using it. Second time through, it's for iPhone 6s. And surprise, surprise, the last time through is going to be on a mobile web. We are telling the user that the first time we ran through, it ran fine. Second time it ran through, it's fine. Third time it's running right now. And again, we're telling you where we clicked and what we clicked as we went through there. Again, this is just more for troubleshooting later in life. If something does haywire off and you need to find out, hey, I told you to click the hamburger menu and you didn't click the hamburger menu, where did you click? To make this an easier conversation and help further troubleshooting. Okay, so I'm getting towards the end of this conversation, or at least a slide deck, not probably conversation. So what I wanted to kind of do is, earlier in our conversation, I was showing you kind of the challenges that were out there, right? High maintenance. Again, if your automation coverage is low, it takes you 3 test scripts to test the login button, one for an Android device, an Apple device, a website, web browser, mobile to web versus all that. We can all see where the spaghetti's out, right? I grew up in a, hey, we have to test 3 versions of every browser, and current browsers, or i.e., you had Chrome back in the day. Well, you still do. You had Opera. That probably dates me a little more, but you had all these ones, and we had to make sure that these things worked on each one of those 3 versions old, and you had to run those test scripts over and over and over again. So you can imagine the automation coverage is a little low. And then somebody would change something. So our high maintenance costs would skyrocket again, right? If I can't write a login script and make it work every single time, I've got to touch that over and over again. I'm putting on my business hat here. The AI return of investment isn't really high, right? Yeah, that script works once, but then you have to update it for my next release or sprint, or the fast pace of releases kind of up on the top. We really don't get our value add back on that. So then you have the business conversation of why would I keep hiring automation specialists when I can hire a bunch of interns to do this testing? Well, long term, you won't be able to keep up, right? So we're hoping to have that conversation. So like I was saying, we hopefully are turning this into our benefits, increase reliability. So no matter how fast you go, hopefully these scripts keep working and working for you. The skill barrier, again, you don't need a full-fledged automation specialist to code and do that with our codeless AI for that. And finally, reducing your scripts. I showed you a quick little use case of our Android, iOS, and websites being slightly different, and that causing time to market challenges and high maintenance costs. When you do that, AI will hopefully help you guys reduce that out. So that is kind of the end of this. I want to open it up for questions. I know we have a little more than 15 minutes left to kind of start the conversation, answer some questions that you guys have.
Let me start off with a few for you, Paul.
Sure thing.
One of the questions that's come in over the chat is, what program language is being used in the background? And I might add a secondary question to that, an add-on question. Is that really important to us, and why?
So in the background, we're still using the same UFT, I believe, to excuse me, let me backtrack. It's the same legacy UFT code to write on, which is what JavaScript, excuse me, to do that. The code that we're using to train AI in the background, I'll have to find out and let the person know that answer. That's one of those things that honestly I haven't put a lot of thought into it. The idea here, just to let everybody know, and I probably should have covered it earlier in this conversation, we at Micro Focus don't think you should throw out what you have and start from scratch. So we've worked a lot with making AI util, and that's what I just refer to it. That portion of AI works with your legacy scripts. So the reason why I say that is, hey, on Monday, or what's today, Tuesday, my boss comes in and says, oh great, we've got AI, rewrite everything into AI and go. Well, let's go back to the business side of that, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense. I shouldn't go ahead and touch scripts that are already working just to make them new and shiny. But in a future release, if I have to touch that script, I can go ahead and start replacing some of the legacy code with AI calls and then make that more and more robust. So if the question is more, hey, do I have to scrap what I've got to get something new? No. What we see is that you guys will, as you do your maintenance cycles through your scripts, go ahead and start putting more and more AI util into that. And I will find out the actual code language that we're using to code the AI in the background.
Here's an add-on question to that. As you're looking into that, would there ever be any reason why someone would want to go into the AI and code directly in there as opposed to just using the UI tools that we have coming from UFT1?
So you won't be able to code your own AI in there, right? You won't be able to say, oh, okay, I'm gonna write my own AI util dot whatever. That's kind of the Micro Focus secret sauce that we're running through there. So there wouldn't be a need to do that. And if you have something that you're interested in that the tool currently doesn't do, please let us know. We are been running this for, like I said, about 1.5 years. Every time we come into a customer saying, yeah, that's great, but can it also do X, Y, and Z? Our R&D development has jumped up and down 9 times out of 10 and said, yes, let's work together and get it to do that. So a nice little fun way of saying, if you got a great idea that you want us to implement, let us know, and more often than not, we will work towards getting that added to our roadmap and get going.
Great. I had another question come in from the audience. How similar is this to descriptive programming, or can you outline some of the differences?
Yeah, so this is a couple of different ways of looking at this, and I know we kind of sped through a lot of it in this conversation. But what we've done is that natural language processing. I used to call it native all the time, which that's why you hear me hesitate when I talk about this. The natural side is very on the descriptive side. The power of that is behind, we've trained the UFT AI portion of it to say, okay, when someone is talking to me and saying, click the profile button, right? If I'm talking to a tester or application developer or somebody and I say, again, let's go back to that Google conversation. Hey, can you Google dog for me? How you do that, those 3-4 steps, great. A lot of legacy systems are legacy UFT. That 3-4 steps was very complex, right? Okay, first I got to pull up the Google homepage. Then I got to tell UFT, look at Google homepage and add that to your object repository. Okay, now that it's part of your object repository, go ahead and find the search field. Now that you know the search field, type dog in there. Now click search. Now do this. So these handful of conversation that you and I are having turns into a plethora of lines of code. And again, sometimes we don't do very well. I mean, I like to pick on Google for this. Google Doodles, when they change the homepage a couple of different times, once a week, once every other week, and do a new image on that, a lot of scripts break at that point, right? So what we're trying to do in the codeless side of this is say, hey, if you're not comfortable writing UFT code, which, there's a large user base out there that's not, but you're comfortable telling me the tasks to do to test this, okay, do that. AI will, or UFT in the background, will take what you've written in there and actually generate lines of code for us to run. And that's that AI util .click ... click the profile button or click Google or search. So that's the descriptive kind of side of that. And then if we're going to kind of swing over to the other side with folks that are very comfortable with writing code, again, more of our robust maintenance side. So instead of saying, hey, go up to the top right corner and click on the hamburger menu or the button and say, now from that button, pick this, pick this, pick this. Man, isn't it a lot easier to say, hey, UFT, go click the hamburger menu and select profile. So I hope that answers the question. If not, let me know and we'll dive in a little deeper.
I think that answers it for now, but if the questioner would like a deeper dive into that, please feel free to unmute and ask Paul directly. As we're going on from that, though, that kind of brings up the question, is you're learning all these things on the screen and all that with the AI, how often does the AI need to be retrained?
So out of the box, AI, and that's why we took a little bit of time to roll this out, right? So this has actually been as part of UFT, kind of unofficially a beta, but part of UFT, like I said, for about 1.5 years. One of the things I did not mention that I probably should, so I'll get on this real quick and answer that. This is free. If you own UFT, you get AI without any extra cost. So if you're interested in this and you have a current copy of UFT or pretty much anything beyond 14.5, I think, you have this. All you have to do is install it separately out of your install deck and you have all the AI util. Our current version 15.01 is a little more robust and does more of the web size of this. We rolled this out solely on mobile devices first, and now we've added more and more on it. So from a retraining of AI, what you have 9 out of 10 times will cover those bases. What we're finding out and why we kind of slow rolled this into more areas is our AI, as we call it, was was really good at picking up things. We were a little worried that it was too good at picking up things, and we didn't want to release it to everything right away and then have customers come back and say, yeah, that's great. It missed this, so there's no trust there. So we've taken a lot of time to retrain this, or not retrain it, to train it to pick up the right objects and move forward. If you do run into something that it doesn't do well, let us know, and we will, kind of retrain that section of it and do it. Right now, from a development standpoint, we're kicking that AI retraining multiple times a day as we're moving forward and adding things to it, right? So as a customer, if you send that feedback and say, hey, in our example, it was the details icon. If it's something that's proprietary to your industry or to your company and it's not really picking that up very well as you're playing that, use that feedback tool. Let us know at Micro Focus and we can start working with you. And what we do is, for those of you not really familiar with how you train AI, there's some really good YouTube clips out there. But basically what we do is we say, very much like we do with the cat and dog conversation I had with the presentations on the newborn through 1 year old. What we do is we sit there and say, okay, AI, that's the detail button. That's the detail button. That's the detail button. And we showed a bunch of different examples of that. And we tell it as a detail button. And then in the second phase of that, we show it detail buttons, but we don't tell us a detail button and say, okay, now on the screen, find the detail button. And then every time it gets it right, yes, no kind of conversations, we kind of praise it and we go, yep, you found the right path. Good job, you have identified detail. And then we build that larger and larger. Now, future, as we're talking down this, as you can imagine, we're training that thing to pick up a lot of different things. What we're hoping happens is that covers more and more of it. Like I said, we do 9 out of 10 times we pick up things, right? Because everybody's using the same icons for pretty much the same things. Again, if you find if you're that 1 out of 10, and maybe even 1 out of 100 as we go long term, let us know and we'll help you out on that. And we'll say, oh, okay, we'll retrain that. We'll get you a new set to send back into, and we'll retrain the AI and give you that new portion of it. It sounds way more complicated than it is. I've seen it in action. It's a real quick process. Now, mind you, they are throwing a lot of servers at it to make it happen.
Hey, I want to get on to the next question because we're coming up to the timeline here. And I have 2 more that I think are really great. Number 1, as you add this AI into some of the existing scripts, how much is there of a time lag is there when adding the AI into the existing scripts? Does it increase overhead significantly for running the script?
It does add overhead, not as much as you would think. Now, I say that because it's the age-old question of it depends, right? So right now, it does run slower. An AI script, full AI, will run slower than a legacy code. But we're not talking minutes. We're talking, depending on how complex that script is or the added line to a legacy one, we're not even talking usually seconds. We're talking a second worth of add-on time. And we're getting better at making that smaller and smaller. The reason why is as we're running that script, we're not telling AI example where the profile is or the hamburger menu in our example, right? It's learning that. It's looking at the screen just like a human would and saying, okay, oh, they moved the profile, or excuse me, the hamburger menu on me. Now I got to look on the screen and see where that is, okay, and click there. As opposed to our legacy one, we were telling it basically the location, right, and saying click right there. So that's why it does run a little slower. What we're hoping is that little bit of overhead added every time you run a script with AI versus legacy will be minimal, which it is, but also if you apply it towards the larger one, you're getting your ROI return back in not having to do maintenance every time. You're getting a larger test set automated because again, if I've got 90 scripts and I have, well, let's make this easier. I've got 30 scripts, but I've got to do it on an Android device, an Apple device, and a web device. Those 30 scripts times 3, now I have 90. If I can go from 90 back down to 30 because AI is running, my test bed runs faster long term. Does that make sense?
It does.
Perfect.
Let me ask another question here that's come up. I hope I'm reading this right. Jump in if I'm not, Sunil. Is scalable for open source? Is similar to Selenium and Appium, where you could pick and choose your OOD languages of choice?
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to ask. Is if you have multiple binding capabilities like you do on an open source automation platform like a Selenium, that's exactly it.
So let me phrase the question in a different way just to make sure I'm understanding. So our UFT one, which is for our QA side and our codeless, those are going to basically be as is. Our UFT for developers, which bolts into their IDE, that will work with multiple languages. I'll get you the exact full list of what it is, but for example, if you're coding in Java in an IDE, you can run UFT AI out of that. Was that the question?
Sunil?
I thought I lost everybody there for a second.
No, I'm still here. I think we just lost Sunil. But he did have another question, and that was, what are the complexities you'd run across when attempting to automate a voice-assisted platform or application? For example, it's a new skill like Bixby, Alexa, Google Home, or B of A has their Erica platform.
So that'd be an interesting question. And we should probably do this more on a one-on-one. So please let them know to reach out. The question really is there from an Alexa or a voice command only or a voice prompts only system. That would be a little tough for you to automate a test, right? I mean, I guess we could talk long term that you could get your computer to speak or play WAV files of somebody speaking, and then you could, write your automation code to do that, right? Hey, play WAV file or play person speaking one, and make sure the device responds appropriately. We definitely have those kind of conversations. I have some team members on my side that are well versed in these sort of things, and I'd be happy to bring them in and have that conversation, because I'm sure there's a way we can do this a lot easier. But off the top of my head, I would think that that's what you would do is, hey, here's some scripts, go ahead and play those back, or get a computer voice to somewhat say it. But again, if you're trying to train your Alexa to understand human voice, you probably don't want a computer speaker repeating that over and over.
Correct.
Yeah, have that person reach out,
and
we'll go from there.
Let me break in, because we got 2 questions in 2 minutes. Yep. Whoever is in the public area with a speaker in the background, please mute your microphone. Here are the last 2 questions. Current neural networks can be up to 128 layers deep or more. What's the configuration of the neural network, and what is the memory footprint to utilize the AI?
First part of that question, I do not know, but I will reach out to R&D and let you guys know. The reason why I say I don't know is I know that's an evolving one. So I know the first version of it was smaller than our current version, right? Like I said, we're building more and more onto this. So let me get that exact leveling out and get back to you there. What was the second part of the question? I'm sorry. Oh, memory footprint size. Yeah, let me get
memory
you
footprint
on that one. So if that individual just wants to reach out, my email address is on the screen. If you just want to reach out to me directly there, I will get that answer back to you on both of those, layers and memory footprint size. The answer on the memory size, it's smaller than you think. You don't need to fully deploy a server just to run this. Matter of fact, when I do a live demo, it all runs off of my laptop.
Okay, last question real quick. We got 30 seconds. Will AI script run on a locked computer?
As in the, okay, I understand that question. If you can make
It's coming from a financial institution standpoint, where they have to have locked computers.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I think to understand the question, I think what they're asking for is, do I need to have internet access to run AI? No. If the device is in your lab and password protected locked, like a Windows device at rest, if you want to be able to unlock that computer and do that, Yes, if you don't want that device to be unlocked, then basically you can tell UFT, hey, when you run into a locked computer, skip it over in the lab and move on to the next one. Does that answer the question, or did I misunderstand it? And silences, I did both. So if that was the case, oh, go ahead.
I believe that answered it, and we've actually come right up on 1 o'clock. We're about a half a minute past. So I want to thank everybody for attending this session, and a lot of great questions. Appreciate the questions from the audience. Paul, thank you. Your knowledge is just amazing on this topic, and we look forward to hearing from you again in the future. One last question from me, though. When do you expect the next release or the next patch level of UFT 1 to come out, and what can we expect as the future?
Yep. So our next version will be 15.02 and expect it early. Our fiscal year end is actually the end of the month. So kind of placeholder it in your head for early in 2021, as in kind of the January, February timeframe. For those who are interested in see a roadmap conversation, we really can't do that in a recorded environment, obviously, because roadmaps are fluid and things like that. But if you'd like to see where that goes, please do reach out to myself, Paul.Bratland at microfocus.com, or your sales rep, and we can coordinate a product roadmap conversation with you. Thanks.
Paul, thanks so much for everything. Terry, thanks for helping set this up. Jennifer, we couldn't have done it without you. We appreciate everyone attending today. We look forward to talking to you in the future. Good evening or good afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.